Blog Talk Radio.
Namaste, folks. It's Nature of Reality Radio on October 8th, 2014. I am your host, Andrew Fisher. Normally doing the show 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Wednesdays. Today we are going from 8 to 9 p.m., an hour-long show, because my guest, Bob Tuskin, needed some scheduling accommodation. I will hopefully be able to get him a second hour. He hasn't called into the queue yet, but hopefully we'll address that first thing if we can get another hour in for his logical activism to overpower the matrix, as I have titled this episode. It's funny, I do a show as a tribute to Jan Irvin last week and his work on the Trivium, and now I find out my next guest, Bob Tuskin, uses the Trivium logic as a guide of sorts. Maybe we'll elaborate on what I did last week. Tuskin, he did present at the Free Your Mind 2013 conference in Philadelphia in April 2013, and he is an activist, radio host, organic gardener, cares about food a lot, obviously, and an eternal student of economics, science, and the arts. He seeks higher form of wisdom and works hard to ensure a better place for his children's children, and that would include our children's children as well, because we're all children of the Creator, while getting very active in public to expose the official story of 9/11, geo-engineering, and other lies that we are fed on a daily basis. Seeking an end to the current slavery-based system to which we live, his solutions-based understanding is an important asset, and again, he utilizes the Trivium as a guide. He hasn't called in yet. Hopefully he will. I told him I would cover news for the first 5 minutes, and we'll do that courtesy of Alex Jones and Company at InfoWars. Well, actually, first of all, before I get to that, I hope you all enjoyed the lunar eclipse last night. Here in the Eastern time zone, it wasn't visible when I was awake. It was around 4 a.m. in the morning. Did have some ascension symptoms, though, apparently. Jaw pain of sorts. It still hasn't gone away, but it's mostly gone away. And if any of you have been suffering from some pain yesterday, last night or so, that was no doubt some ascension symptoms with the lunar eclipse, in all likelihood anyway. And I'm not exactly sure what the astrological significance is there. I know astrology is real, but I don't really follow it in terms of horoscopes and all, but I hope you all maybe got something from that higher consciousness and all. But anyway, I got to get to the news here. Breaking. Sheriff's deputy who was forced to enter Ebola apartment falls ill. Oh, this disease is spreading. Alfred Weber did talk about how Ebola, this is definitely a genetically engineered strain. It's acting differently than previous cases of Ebola, how it's contagious, how it's airborne, and all the rest of it. Definitely genetically engineered in a lab, as a biological weapon this Ebola virus was, and now it's being spread everywhere, and they're taking asinine steps to ensure people stay safe from Ebola, which is a dead giveaway that it's part of a plot to make us sick, maybe to put us in FEMA camps and all. But now a sheriff's deputy who was forced to enter the Ebola apartment, he's fallen ill to it, and hopefully he won't spread it to other people. Next article, CDC fails to institute Ebola screening at major international airport. The CDC provides no comment on lapse in security at SeaTac. Don't know where the SeaTac airport is, but you would think that if the TSA cared about our safety. It's not. It's to humiliate us, control us, and dominate us in every way. And you would think that they would put some Ebola screening at airports, and well, maybe they will, but maybe they won't because they want us to get sick, and they're just going to fake the screening. But anyway, next article. Feds announce airport fever screenings for Ebola, which can be beaten with ibuprofen. Infection control specialist says ibuprofen can reduce fever enough to pass screenings. Okay, so don't know how the TSA would do this. Again, I said I don't know if they will or they won't do it at certain airports, but maybe it may not be such a bad idea because they're trying to spread it on purpose for people to take a good idea to take extra precaution to make sure we don't get sick here. All right, next article. A lot of Ebola stuff. That's what Alex Jones has been talking about recently. Ebola. Did a Sunday show recently. Said I couldn't take calls. There was a lot of news to cover. Well, 98% of the show was about Ebola. But anyway, no laughing matter, folks. But anyway, White House reporter after Ebola press conference says we're screwed. Hot mic catches journalists making candid comments. Well, hopefully we are on a positive timeline, and we are, so hopefully his "we're screwed" statement is wrong. Our next article report, military preparing to respond to Ferguson riots. The Mississippi source says authorities plan to shut down airports. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on in Ferguson. It's kind of not in the news as often as it was in the past, but maybe if there's rioting going on there, the military is going to try to exacerbate the police state and do lots of tyrannical things to to Missouri and maybe the rest of the world at large and use Ferguson riots to justify it, then again, it's obvious the police are being the evil ones there and not the rioters. Next article, red link here. Ebola patient dies at Texas hospital. Quote, Mr. Duncan succumbed to an insidious disease, Ebola. Okay, let's hope these deaths don't continue. All right, only two more articles here. Breaking. U.S. orders agents to monitor travelers for Ebola. The CDC announces it will implement screening procedure at airports. Okay, already covered this earlier. You don't really need to talk about this. And a non-Ebola issue here. Nebraska schools ban term boys and girls, the term boys and girls, and they train teachers to avoid gendered expressions. Weird internal documents promote metrosexuality and gender spectrum, refer to genderbread person instead of gingerbread man. This is nanny state all over you. 2 + 2 = 5 because the schools say it, and the schools are so corrupt and absurd and ridiculous. Oh, and now they ban the term boys and girls for no other reason other than to say, we'll ban whatever we want, get used to it. How disgusting. But bad news, Bob Tuskin is not here. I guess at this point I have no choice but to go to my Gmail account, and he does. I did send him all the info. You should know how to call in. Just bear with me, folks. All right, I'm just typing the number in here. In the second message, I didn't give the phone number, but I did send in the first, so he should have known. 646-478-4747 is the call-in number. Ah, there he is, in Skype. All right, that's good to know. All right, folks, I am on the air.
Hi, Andrew. How are you?
Bob, I am so glad to hear you. All that confusion about what Skype was and how it works and everything and all that. But I'm glad to have you on. We don't have to worry about that. Well, maybe we do have some other things to worry. No, we don't. People in the chat room said that they didn't hear that annoying music again. I'm guessing there was some Blog Talk glitches going on. But let's get rolling right to this. First of all, is there anything you want to tell your audience how to reach you and everything?
My audience or your audience?
Both of our audience. I give my guests, make it seem like they have all the glory, not me. At least I try to.
No, everybody can go fuck themselves.
Oh. I know you're kidding around. But then again, maybe you feel like that because the world seems to be going to hell even though we're on a positive timeline. So, with Ebola and everything.
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me on tonight, man. No, people know me. I don't have to go over the administrative BS. What's up?
Oh, nothing, and I might as well get right started off to this. I definitely want to get you a second hour because of this glitch. I'm available any day up until next Wednesday from 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I can give you another hour, and maybe I won't even do news just to make sure you can make up for this time. Are you available any day? I'll make the show by 11:59 p.m. tonight if you are.
I'll have to check with my wife to see if that's doable, but we'll play it by ear for now. But I'm glad to be here. There's a lot going on. I was on Clyde Lewis's Ground Zero last week talking about the Ebola scare and giving my thoughts on that. We can touch on that if you like. I can also touch on the upcoming Free Your Mind conference that I'm organizing this coming 2015, which is starting to come together nicely here. We're going to announce the venue very shortly and the dates, and we already have several speakers listed at the Free Your Mind Conference website.
I will be there, as a matter of fact. I'll make sure to buy tickets, the one in Philadelphia you're referring to. You'll see me there. And since you wanted to talk about Ebola, we might as well start with that. You're an activist of sorts. It says so in your description. And so let's get right to that. What do you want the world to know about Ebola?
Well, there's a number of compelling things about this Ebola situation that stick out to me, namely because of my background with the HIV fraud and the extensive research I've done on that topic. There's a big connection here. As you might understand, HIV is something that has been used to essentially promote a eugenics campaign throughout Africa and throughout the West as well. But in Africa, it's a brand name for poverty. Ebola seems to mimic several of the functions of the AIDS fraud and does a little bit more on top of all that. And it all starts with the testing involved here. Revolves around the PCR test. The PCR test, who was developed by Nobel Prize winner Dr. Kary Mullis, is a test that has a lot of benefits. However, it is not able to isolate the virus, HIV virus, or Ebola virus for that matter, and at very best points to some antibodies and other indicators that may suggest somebody is carrying Ebola or HIV, which is a retroactive virus that has never been proven to be the sole cause of AIDS. So it's a bit counterintuitive because everybody's wanting to discuss the bioweapon aspect of this all, and there certainly is plenty of evidence that the State Department and the CDC owns the patent on Ebo-Bun, the specific strain of anthrax, I had a Freudian slip there, Ebola, that was developed at Fort Detrick along with anthrax and other bioweapons. However, it seems clear to me that that might not be entirely what's at hand here. We do know that Ebola, the patented version, is airborne, despite what we're being told about it being transmitted through bodily interactions and so on and so forth. And we know that it acts very differently than what the mainstream media is telling us. All the while, I think it's very important we understand that a lot of the fear here is just that. It's fear. It's not based on reality. And it serves the purpose for both the powers that shouldn't be and the useless eaters. In other words, Big Pharma is ready to bring out the vaccine, whether or not there's a legitimate virus at hand here that we're all going to catch and it's going to cull the useless eaters off with. There's going to be a vaccine. There's going to be medication. We saw stock prices surge for several of the leading pharmaceutical giants that had been involved with Ebola medication research. That will continue. That trend will continue. There will be a push at some point to get people vaccinated, to get people proactively, just like with HIV now, preemptively on the HIV medications. And I see that as a very similar campaign here. Again, whether or not there indeed is an isolated and solely identified virus here at hand. There's no doubt in my mind people are getting sick. But what's at hand here is a different story.
Well said. And yeah, I have no doubt it was genetic. That virus was engineered in a lab of sorts. And well, one thing you seem to be very big on is 9/11, and I'm big on it too, but I like to go where a lot of 9/11 truthers fear to tread because they don't want to talk about this because, among other things, they think it would discredit the truth movement. What I'm referring to is the facts that are provable through the scientific method, as Jim Fetzer and John Lear explained when I had them on my show, that the planes that hit the Twin Towers had to have been holograms and a direct energy weapon had to have been used to dustify the buildings. We don't need to go into the laws of physics stuff in regards to 9/11. Architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth has covered that head to toe all the way out to the point where they're preaching to the choir now. Someone asked Richard Gage, do you think you're preaching to the choir this past 9/11 when I was there in New York, as I always will be. But in regards to 9/11, what do you want to tell us that you think that people should be aware of many years after that, since it's happened now, 13 years after the fact, and what do you have to say to all those 9/11 truthers who want to discuss things that others don't want to talk about?
Well, I think you're crazy, and I think you're discrediting the movement when you bring up space beams and holographs. No, I'm joking. I look at everything with an open, critical mind. I've had Judy Wood on. I've had Dr. Fetzer. Jim's a friend of mine. I've had on you name it. And I think at this point, there's two different discussions going on. There's the more in-depth discussion that you and I might have, Andrew, and then there's the discussion that still a huge percentage of our population has not had. In other words, there are several 9/11 101 topics that need to be exposed to the masses, and there's no doubt in my mind that Building 7 is the best introduction to 9/11 course. It's so blatantly right in front of everyone's face that if they watch that footage of Building 7's collapse and don't say, what's that? Then, there's lights on, nobody home sort of deal going on. And that's the case already for a lot of people. And that's not to say I'm not trying to put down people who haven't been shown this sort of information, because a lot of times once they are, they very much have the wheels start turning, so to speak, and I admire that. So I never alienate those who aren't awake, the sheeple and that kind of thing, because I feel a lot of times that it's a matter of circumstance. It's a matter of the fact that they're working their 9 to 5s, and you can make a million excuses. It's when that light goes off, that light bulb goes off, or that lack of wanting to see that light bulb when presented with it, and so on and so forth. That's when I start to basically look at that individual as a lost cause, so to speak. And there's a certain percentage that will be apathetic despite all of the evidence that you could show them, all of the smoking guns. There's people that wake up and then say, you know what, but who cares? What can we do about it? And that kind of thing. I don't understand that apathetic attitude. I never will. But there's plenty of people out there that have the light bulb go off and then put their head back in the sand like an ostrich. So at the end of the day, Andrew, what I try to do is focus on making that introduction to those who haven't seen it, and I do so in different ways, whether it's injecting it into radio shows, calling in on mainstream radio shows, that kind of thing, showing up at my city commission meeting, confronting people like Noam Chomsky, a known 9/11 gatekeeper. You can watch my confrontation with him, or Penn and Teller, other 9/11 BS gatekeepers, Rudolph Giuliani. I confronted Senator Bob Grant, who was on the 9/11 Commission, or the 9/11 Security Committee, rather. and the list goes on and on and on. So I try to take that approach. But at the end of the day, between you and I, 9/11 it's kind of a subject that we've been there, done that, man. There's only so much time we can spend on it, on radio shows like this. So I like to focus on 9/11. Now what? What can we do to go beyond this, to go beyond bringing awareness? Because obviously the first answer is, well, what can we do? We can bring awareness to that. All right, so that's what I covered just a moment ago. But then what do? We can sit here and scratch our heads all day long and argue about whether there was nanothermite or there was directed energy weapons used, and I think that's a good discussion to have. Don't get me wrong. I'm not shutting the gate to those discussions. However, I don't think we should allow it to consume us to the point where we're not focusing on preparing, we're not focusing on getting our families in order, taking back our sheriff's offices, and whatever it may be on a more grassroots level, if you will. So I don't know that I answered your question. I don't know that I made any sense with what I just had to say, but I kind of, at this point, really just run the gamut with my thoughts on that topic, because it's been, 7 years now for me that I've been going down the 9/11 rabbit hole, so to speak. And at some point you say, it's not getting old, but it's at some point not a discussion that I continue to have when we're talking to the choir. Because right now I'm preaching to the choir, Andrew. I'm not talking to anyone who doesn't know the same story that you and I have followed very closely.
Right. That is true. And, I want to see the 9/11 truth when we get bigger and bigger, even though the attendance at Ground Zero might get smaller every year. That does not imply the movement isn't getting bigger. But you said one thing about expanding consciousness. It said here in your bio on the Free Your Mind Conference website, you use the Trivium as a guide. It's funny how I did a tribute to Jan Irvin last week. I couldn't find a guest.
Yeah, he hates you.
He does? Oh.
No, I'm just joking.
Yeah, okay. You love to do that, don't you? Yeah, I figure you're joking.
Yeah,
I sent him a message on Facebook saying that I made a tribute to him, and he said, "Hey, overall it was a great show. Nitpicked a few things, but I do believe he deserves maybe a little more credit than people would give him for his work on the Trivium, just because it seems to make sense, the stuff that he's saying." And Alex Jones, who I do admire despite his fear mongering, had Jan Irvin on his show once, and they talked about how the American Revolution seemed to be a Trivium ideology revolution of sorts. What do you see in the Trivium that makes you decide to use it as a guide?
I studied philosophy, and it's fairly straightforward protocol to critical thinking, if you will, and to having a rational mind. It's the process that we need to go through when identifying a truth, if you will. And you have to start off with grammar, establishing the parts, coming together with an understood meaning of the various terms and terminologies, and then putting it through the rigmarole of logic, which is something that I've specialized in, whether it's seeing if there's any contradictions, if there's any logical fallacies, so on and so forth, which we all do on an intuitive level to some degree or another, some more so than others. But it's a great way to say, hey, this is passing the litmus test, if you will. And then the last part of the Trivium is rhetoric, which does not, it's not necessarily in line with the normal connotation of rhetoric. When we say rhetoric, we mean wisdom. We mean this idea of taking what you've learned and have come to realize is truth, and doing with it what needs to be done in a adequate fashion, in a way that can relay it to others beyond just your own internal understanding. And that's what we do as activists to a certain extent. That's what we do as teachers. That's what we do as radio hosts, and so on and so forth. So all of these things that I just mentioned are extremely important to the classic education and this is what they're not teaching in our indoctrination schools. And this is what I hope to teach my son, a way to systematically process information and come to conclusions based on logic and fact.
All right, makes sense. In regards to education, says here you're an eternal student of economics, science, and the arts. Now, this is a subject that I've talked about with some of my other guests, whether or not it is in the best interest of society to abolish the classroom environment entirely and just let their children go out and play. Even David Icke said in his one of his recent 9-hour talks that children should be out playing, not getting a bogus education in the classroom. Well, what if the classrooms are teaching them good things like maybe period 1, metaphysics, period 2, meditation, period 3, conspiracy theories and true history, period 4, a gym class, getting out into nature is what it would be like, if you get my drift. I mean, we could debate how many hours a day a student should spend in a classroom environment, if a classroom environment really is the way to go. But since you want to be a student in some things like economics, science, and the arts, which people say are worthwhile things to learn, what would you have to say about the whole issue of whether or not we should have classrooms or not?
Well, I've studied unschooling, and the idea that there doesn't need to be a system of grades and boxes and that kind of thing, which is pretty intuitive. I mean, when we're born, Andrew, we have this natural curiosity, and we learn without any structure necessarily. So I don't think having access to courses on the aforementioned topics is a bad thing. I think the way in which we structure it is what we should look at as being potentially harmful to the mind, and also the way in which we gauge and grade and put our children in a competitive box known as a grade. And that's the issue. I think that it's great to have access to information of important topics that are going to truly enrich the minds. But at the same time, anything that's forced down our throat, it's forced down your throat. You're gonna get that gag reflex, man. You know this. So as a result, I think that it's wise to not force that education in a more contrived fashion. I think that needs to be done naturally, and I think that needs to be done with help by the parent and not by the state. That really is one of my main things is, our children, they learn from who they spend the majority of their time with. And if they're spending the majority of their time with their peers, they're not learning the values that the parents want to teach necessarily. And as a result, I think homeschooling co-ops are absolutely important. And also it takes the responsibility and puts it in the hands of the parents, and it doesn't allow them to simply let the state babysit their children because they're too lazy to do so. Now, that's a choice that parents make on a case-by-case basis. And again, there might be some sort of support from a community, like a co-op of some sort. But at the end of the day, our government schooling system has proven to any of us watching that it's broken and that it needs some serious help. John Taylor Gatto, who won Teacher of the Year in New York, came out and very famously showed the problems that he found from being inside the system with the education compulsory schooling system. So did Charlotte Iserbyth and a number of different people who have come out that I've learned a tremendous amount from. So that's kind of the school of thought, no pun intended, that I follow when it comes to education, Andrew.
All right. A lot of people are going to take different approaches on this issue. It's an agree to disagree kind of thing. But one thing that we can all agree on is the geo-engineering factor that's designed to screw over our health, the planet, and everything. And I guess, in a sense, the global warming hoax, climate change hoax might fall into the whole issue of geoengineering to some degree. The whole thing about chemtrails and all, in my interview with Alfred Weber, we talked about how they can turn humans into like robots of sorts with the materials that's in them and all that. And David Icke even brought up the idea that the chemtrails are being used to make the environment on our planet more suitable for the archons. But there's other forms of geoengineering. I know you obviously think it's a big deal because it was in your bio there. What are you concerned about in regards to geoengineering?
Well, I'm concerned at its effect on our health. We have shown that there's barium, aluminum oxide, and strontium, and that's very concerning to me. And I'm concerned about the fact that we have not had it disclosed to us by anyone else outside of the geoengineers themselves, who have been pretty outspoken about the fact that geoengineering is real and it's taking place. And I worked with Michael Murphy for the second documentary film he made, What in the World Are They Spraying? Or is it Why in the World Are They Spraying? It's Why in the World. I mixed
well,
the
actually,
two up.
there's both What in the World and Why in the World. What was the first
right,
one?
Right, and the second one that I worked on with him, Why in the World Are They Spraying? He came to Florida, and he attended a conference that was being held by the aerosol something or another, and they were pretty outspoken about the nature of geoengineering, rather. So it's concerning to me, and we've continued to monitor through different testing what's actually in these trails, and we found things that lead to increased rates of Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's has more than doubled in the past 10 or so years, and what is Alzheimer's? It's aluminum deposits in the brain. So that's very troubling to me. My grandfather passed away with Alzheimer's, and we see that continuing to spread. And the list goes on and on and on as far as why geoengineering is so disconcerting to anybody paying attention. And we know that they're not simply contrails. We know the difference between a contrail and a chemtrail. One dissipates and the other lingers and spreads, and eventually what comes up must come down.
Yeah, and by the way, Morgellons disease, I believe I heard about that being tied to chemtrails. Do you have anything to say about that?
I've heard that. I've heard from many people on that, and I don't know, maybe.
All right, so definitely something worth looking more into. It says you take organic gardening very seriously. I also have a garden, plant organic seeds that have no GMOs, got them from My Patriot Supply, and they grow pretty well in all of those. Some of the animals attack the corn, unfortunately, but in regards to organic gardening, do you have any special advice for people in regards to how they should garden? Like, should you maybe literally talk to the plants and show more love for them, because then they'll actually grow better if you literally talk to them, or are you not really going to go that far in regards to how to best be an organic gardener?
No, I'll go even further. I think you should dance naked on the plants, because then they'll really get turned on.
They love naked bodies because it's nature for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gardening is something that's so important, especially for those that are thinking about what's going to happen when our food system is potentially disrupted. And that can be done in a number of different ways, whether it's natural, man-made, or not. So it's something that is very important, and at the same time is not something that you can wake up one day and master. Farmers have been learning through trials and tribulations for thousands of years. I know, it's crazy. There's a learning curve. And there are seasons where you grow a plant successfully and another plant not so successfully, and you learn about this or learn about that. This issue comes up that you had, and this issue goes away that you once had, and the list goes on and on. So it's very important that anybody who sees the big picture here starts to get active and practice that skill and refine that skill. Like you mentioned, you found that the deer were coming after the corn, and corn's very hard to grow unless you have a very large area to grow it in. And then if you have a very large area, then you're going to have to deal with corn pests. So you have to find companion plants to grow with the corn. The three-sister rule is one that I think might help. And that's basically growing corn with companion plants, whether it's beans and corn and squash, Those are the Three Sisters, I believe, or another set of diverse planting that you might come up with, which is in line with the permaculture structure, which is something that I've studied and practiced. I mean, Andrew, it's important, and it's one of those things that I could spend an entire show on, and another one of those things that I think people just need to experience for themselves. It's extremely enriching to get your hands in the ground and to be in touch with nature and where your food comes from. And it's also healthy for you, because we can't trust the food, as we all know. Therefore, let's grow the food ourselves. Let's know that we got that good quality heirloom seed from My Patriot Supply or somebody else, and let's know that that food was grown in soil that was not sprayed with Monsanto's Roundup or any other pesticides or chemicals, and that the worm castings and bat guano with Ebola in it and everything else natural grew those crops for us. And I think at the end of the day, it'll put a smile on your face at the very least.
Yeah, it puts a smile on my face to be able to grow plants. It's something humans like to do, just be horticultural and agricultural. It just makes you feel overall well. One thing that doesn't make us feel well, though, is the economy, because it says you're an eternal student of economics. I want to get back to that. Our financial system is obviously untenable because they loan us money that does not exist and charge us interest on the loans. That makes debt and inflation unavoidable. However, I do get weekly updates from Sheldon Neidl, ET contactee of the Galactic Federation of Light, the benevolent Galactic Federation of Light, always talking about in his weekly updates how behind the scenes benevolent ETs who watch over us are actually trying to get a new currency reset, gold-backed currency. Hopefully someday we'll be able to.
It's a bunch of garbage.
You don't subscribe to that, well, we're on a positive timeline, so doesn't it mean that at some point that the economic system of fractional reserve banking would have to collapse, and soon we'll be able to do what Alex Collier says and be like all the other ET races out there that don't use money?
If they don't use money, then why would it be gold back? Because isn't gold money?
I don't know. That's a good question. Is it a stepping stone to getting to using no money at all? Question for Sheldon Neidl.
Not a very good stepping stone, because gold is based on the same principle. And if you can print gold out of thin air and there's technology to suggest that we can indeed do that, then it's no different than printing money out of thin air and putting zeros in a computer and creating fractional reserve banking. So I find that scarcity-based economic system to be bullshit, quite frankly. And I think that we're being misled. This Galactic Federation stuff, although it might have interesting information coming from it, and from what I just so you know, Andrew, I have very limited understanding, but I have another friend who subscribes to what they've been telling him, and he's relayed essentially the same goal-based. Well, that's scarcity-based economics, and if they really are a benevolent factor that is going to bring us into a different dimension, or a different system of less control and less slavery or whatever, then they wouldn't present something like gold. That's some asshole who's typing that, who has his very poor understanding of the way resources should be distributed, and very poor understanding of how technology has superseded the scarcity-based economic model that we've had for the last several thousands of years.
And, well, even in the fourth dimension, according to Andromeda Council contactee Tolek, we still have to work, but we'll be able to exchange in, forms of energy and that. So don't assume if we have a consciousness shift, which some people, like Alfred Weber, are saying is expected around 2017. Not really going to go into that in this specific show, but it's just something to entertain the idea of how is money going to change when we get to that point on this positive timeline. But one thing that we definitely should talk about is, are the sheeple going to change? You mentioned this earlier, and one thing that I have said many times on my show, and I don't like saying it, I'll probably become infamous and famous for saying this because it seems to be a trademark, even though I don't like saying it, that even though the significant majority of government secrets. They say governments can't keep secrets. Well, that's truthful to some degree, because the government secrets have been exposed by whistleblowers, conspiracy theorists, and investigative journalists to a huge extent. But the problem, unfortunately, is that it's very easy for governments to get away with their secrets being exposed, because a very significant percentage of the common people who make up the general public on planet Earth are so paradigmatic, so fearful, and so flat out stupid that they will refuse to believe something shocking or disturbing, even if the evidence shows that they have no choice but to believe it. Case in point, the laws of physics violations on 9/11. I mean, you said you've basically given up on them, but at the same time, you have to understand that those sheeple, I'm sorry if people think that's a derogatory term, but it's frequently used, and as long as there's a large percentage of them on planet Earth, then it's going to be hard to break free of this prison planet matrix. So how do you propose we wake them up, or do we give up? Yeah, go ahead.
I think there's two categories of people, man. There's the ones who are sheeples by default, and then there's the ones who choose to stay there, and when presented with the right information, turn a blind eye to it. So, there needs to be that distinction. Assume that somebody is one way or another. I've been pleasantly surprised many of times that somebody is indeed genuinely interested in hearing other information and entertains it with an open and critical mind. And if they're thinking about it, that's important to me. Now, there's plenty of people out there, indeed, who are programmed by television programming, and they call it that for a reason, as you know, and they're very much stuck in the matrix. But who are we to say that these people are dumb or smart, or not smart, rather? I think we got to be very careful when we have conversations that are lines, and I think this is very much on a generalized conversation with no real focus. So I'll end it there.
Yeah, it may not be a good idea to talk about it too long. But you're also a student of the arts. It's interesting. When I had Ben Stewart, who also presented with you at the Free Your Mind conference in April 2013 in Philly, he wanted me to change the title of my show to mention something about the arts, like understanding the arts or something to that effect. His definition of arts may be different from yours, or maybe it isn't. I know you're into the liberal arts, as evidenced by the fact that you follow the Trivium. But in regards to being a student of the arts, what exactly do you mean by arts? Because that is such a broad term.
Mm-hmm.
Hello?
Yeah.
Oh.
I don't know.
You don't know?
Nope.
Oh. Okay. So they didn't. Okay.
Do you ever have? Remember, I host the show too, and I always wanted the guest to just say, "I don't know," and end it there and not talk again. What a pain in the ass guest that might be. And here I am doing it to you. But I don't know, man. I like the arts. I enjoy them. I think Ben's got a great understanding of how arts and shamanism, and I learned a lot from his talk, which brought some interesting insights to light. And the arts. What do I mean by the arts? I enjoy music. I enjoy laughter and aesthetic art and all the things associated with living and loving and spirituality and art.
Yeah, I like the arts too. I seem to have I liked to paint when I was really young, but I seem to have lost that. Hobbies change over time for everybody, as we all change along with the consciousness shift that's going on. But also a student of science. A lot of mainstream science obviously doesn't tell us the whole story. By the way, we'll have about 7.5 minutes left when I'm done babbling about this for a brief moment. But mainstream science does hide a lot of stuff from us. It's not that it's wrong. A lot of it is right to a great extent, but so much is kept from us because the powers that be don't want us to know a lot of things. Classic example I like to use is in the documentary A New History of Early Man on the UFO TV Studios YouTube channel. Found evidence of life on of human life on the North American continent 250,000 years ago, long before mainstream science, and the only scientists who lost their jobs in this regard were the people that followed that, and all the others did not lose their jobs. There's obviously a conspiracy to cover this up. So as an activist who takes science seriously, how do we, do you have any ideas or suggestions or anything to say about how mainstream science hides the truth from us to such despicable degrees, to like firing people and all?
Well, I don't know that there's necessarily a single entity known as mainstream that conspires to do these things, obviously. But anything that we've been told in the classrooms about science, whether it's plate tectonics, the theory of plate tectonics, or the nature of our universe, and so on and so forth, all of these things, well, turns out there's more to. And I've been surprised about a number of different things that at one point I would have said, the Earth is flat. The Earth is flat. Well, it turns out the Earth might be round. And then we hear the Earth, well, it turns out it might not be entirely round. So science should always be changing and reassessing itself. And the definition of science implies that it does so. And I continue to take a look at the validity of the situation using things like the scientific method, because I think it's a pretty darn good way of testing things. It's not a perfect way, but it's a pretty darn good way. And we can apply that to a lot of different things, whether it be geo-engineering or 9/11 or any of the aforementioned topics that we had discussed tonight. So I'm very interested in the role that plays, but I am also very wary of the fact that science can become a religion. Scientific dogma is no different than a religious movement, and that is a very dangerous thing. That scientism, as I like to call it, is a ideology no different than any other blind brainwash, and that can be very dangerous in its own right. So we got to be careful about how we throw around that term of science, or say that this is backed by science or that's backed by science. You know, and it's a very fine line there between fact and something that can be reassessed and reanalyzed.
Yes, and one final subject. I can give you about maybe 2.5 minutes on this one subject. There's a couple of things I want to mention at the end of the show with you.
By the way, Andrew, you know you can go live on Blog Talk, or long on Blog Talk. By the way, you know this, right?
Yeah, but for how long? I don't know how long it's going to be before they cut off the phone line.
The live show will stop playing, but the recording will continue at least for another hour. But I mean, so in other words, you don't have to feel rushed to go by their exact time. I had a Blog Talk show years and years ago, and unless it's changed, don't feel too rushed to go by their exact timing.
Okay, well, are you available for another hour tonight, and we'll give this a try, or do you want to?
No, I'm not saying that I am, but I can go another 10 minutes or so.
All right, well, that's good to know. We'll do that, and then we'll try to get you on for another hour some other time before next Wednesday. But slavery, you say you want to put an end to the current slavery-based system of which we live. Well, what is a slavery? Well, some people would say that employment in and of itself is slavery. Well, some people say, well, no, that's not right, because you get paid to be employed. So how can it be slavery if you're getting paid? Well, no, that's part of the illusion that they would assert. The whole idea behind having us employed to make enough money to keep paying bills is a way to keep us from doing other things like exposing conspiracies and getting out into nature and all that other good stuff that we could be doing. And slavery, the whole schools are being turned into prisons for our kids, and they're taking away students' rights, and the courts are basically saying you don't have the same rights in school, and soon they're going to treat us all like the slaves that they treat kids in school, because that's the plan. I mean, do you agree with the idea that employment is slavery, and what other things in life do you see that make you think, oh, that's slavery, I don't like that?
Well, our economic system is slavery in the sense that it's perpetual debt, as you know. So our system is slavery. However, in some regards it is, because we do have plenty of technology that could be utilized that would forego the need of having a lot of the manual labor that we have, and things that are remedial jobs simply there for the sake of paying somebody through a Federal Reserve note. So is it slavery? Not entirely, but it is a different type of slavery in a sense, and that's something that I'm concerned about.
Glad you gave your take on that. Two other things we should be especially concerned about: the NSA surveillance system and the right to bear arms. Sandy Hook was so obviously an inside job, and conspiracy theorists can now say nobody died at Sandy Hook because the FBI recently released death toll reports, and for Newtown in the time period that the Sandy Hook was said to happen, there's 0 deaths. So you can now say the government says nobody died at Sandy Hook, so what do you have to say about that, people? And if people are not sheeple, they'll wake up and realize something ain't right there. But the point is they want to disarm the population so they can control all of us. All the countries except the United States, Switzerland, and Israel to some degree have basically been entirely disarmed, and the shootings in Great Britain and Australia, actually it was in Tasmania, I believe, that they used to justify disarming the Australian population, and also the things in the UK, and crime rate has gone through the roof and all that. In regards to the right to bear arms and how important a right that is, because if we lose that, we lose everything, and all the false flags that were being used to justify taking it, Sandy Hook, Columbine, and all the rest of it. What do you have to say about that subject?
Yeah, well, we need our guns, man. That's for sure. So the second they take away and disarm the public, we're in trouble. And I will have to call it a night here in just another minute, because the little one is starting to get a little restless, and I got to put him down to bed here. And that's a big part of the issue here with my timing, Andrew. And I hope you understand. It's just very difficult. I work all day. I try to organize the conference a bit, and people can stay up to date by going to freeyourmindconference.com to follow any updates with that. And then I have a show coming again at some point. I'm in a little bit of a transition period with that. And at the end of the day, I'm trying to be the father to my son that he deserves. So,
all right, that's understandable. I guess, well, I mentioned the NSA surveillance system. If I do get you on for another hour, that will be one of the things we talk about. I'm not going to hassle you about this. I'll let you contact me. Well, actually, I said sometime before next Wednesday, when I'm scheduled to have Fritz Springmeier on, just so my listeners know, Fritz Springmeier is supposed to be my guest from 6 to 8 p.m. next Wednesday. But I would like to get you on for another hour, and I probably won't even cover the news. Awesome. Just to make up for that lost time. So anytime this upcoming week, before Wednesday from 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern, you got my email, right? fan of2012@gmail.com.
I do, and I'll reach out to you. Did we meet at the last Free Your Mind conference?
I was only there for the day that Alfred Weber and Laura Eisenhower presented. Couldn't make it the other days, but I do plan on buying a ticket to all 3 days of the conference, or however long it's going to be for this one.
Sure. Yeah, I was there. I was maybe emceeing that day, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Well, I was.
Do you remember?
What would you say?
What day was that? Do you remember?
What date? Oh, it was late April, sometime in late April, like April 25th, something to that effect.
No, what day? Was it a Saturday or Sunday?
I believe it was a Saturday. Okay. All right, so yeah, you'll see me there. I don't live very far from Philly, so I could definitely take the train down there every night, and I'll hopefully we'll run into each other.
Yeah, I'll give you a little bit of a sneak peek here, and you'll be the first show to air this. So I'm going to give you the scoop. It's probably going to be at the Bucks County Hilton.
Oh,
or excuse me, the Bucks County Sheraton.
Oh, so it's not even in the city.
A little bit outside of the city.
Oh, okay.
Not entirely, but it's going to be in a nearby suburb. So.
Oh. Okay, maybe I won't be able to take the train up there. I presumed it was going to be at the location that it was last year in like the historic section of Philly, but I guess that's not going to happen. So well, wherever it is, I'll buy tickets to all 3 days. So hope to see you again. I'm not going to bother you. You can just email me and let me know
Awesome,
what
man.
day works, and I will.
And listen, I appreciate you having on all of the speakers at the Free Your Mind conference and continuing to keep us in the loop. We appreciate it. I saw you had my buddy John Vibes on, and well, it seems like you got a lot of great guests on, man. So if I don't come on, I'll certainly be listening because it seems like you got some pretty good shows in the works and have done several great shows.
Well, I actually don't let the same guest on twice because I made a goal of getting as many different people on this show as possible before giving one specific guest double dips. I just feel in my heart that that's the fairest way to do a show. It does give me a lot of grief in some way to tell my guests at the end of the show that they probably won't be expecting another call to come on because I want to get different people on. But hey, most of them seem to think that is also a fair way to do it. But again, you're an exception to this in a sense that I would like to get you another hour. So just contact me if you can, and hopefully I'll get you on before I get Fritz Springmeyer on.
Great, Andrew. Thank you again for reaching out to me, and we'll definitely keep you in the loop at the Free Your Mind conference.
All right, and no more Skype issues on the next show, hopefully. All right.
No, it happens, dude. I believe me, I've seen it a million times. You take care, all right?
All right, talk to you later. Bye. Folks, I don't know if you can hear me, but the show is going to end now. Namaste.